The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Hamid Karzai, President of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Hamid Karzai, President of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we speak today, the world is shaken by the depravity of fanatics who have committed acts of insult against the faith of over 1.5 billion Muslims. We strongly condemn these offensive acts, whether it is the production of a film, the publication of cartoons, or indeed any other act of insult and provocation. Such acts can never be justified as freedom of speech or expression. Equally, they cannot give reason for the genuine protest to be used to incite violence with terrible losses of innocent lives. It is a matter of grave concern that our world remains strewn by daily occurrences of violence, hatred, and injustice. In particular, the menace of Islamophobia is a worrying phenomenon that threatens peace and coexistence among cultures and civilizations. I call upon leaders in the West, both politicians and the media, to confront Islamophobia in all its many forms and manifestations. It is incumbent upon us all to advance the cause of dialogue and cooperation, to fight the forces of division and hatred, and to fulfill the promise of a better and brighter future for our coming generations. We must work to defeat the protagonists of the conflict of civilizations and support the voices of tolerance and understanding. Mr. President, my country, Afghanistan, is testament to the benefits of multilateral cooperation and international solidarity. It was a little over a decade ago when many countries from across the world joined the Afghan people in our struggle for peace and against the forces of extremism and terrorism. At the time, Afghanistan was a country decimated in all regards. For decades, we had suffered unnoticed from violence, deprivation, and from sinister foreign intervention. Long before terrorism struck the world as a common security threat, Afghans were the victims of the atrocity of terrorist networks from different parts of the world that had made Afghanistan their haven. Looking back 10 years ago, Afghanistan has transformed remarkably. Democracy has taken root. Health services are accessible to the majority of the population in all corners of the country. Millions of students, boys and girls, are enrolled in primary and higher education. Our achievements have not come about easily, though. The aspirations of the Afghan people for security and peace are yet to be realized. As the world's fight against terrorism continues unabated, the Afghan people continue to pay the biggest price any nation has paid in both life and treasure. Terrorism is not rooted in the Afghan villages and towns. It never was. Its sources and its support networks all exist beyond Afghanistan's borders. Therefore, while the international community's security is being safeguarded from the threat of terrorism, the people of Afghanistan must no longer be made to pay the price and endure the brunt of the war. It is indifference to the immense sacrifices of the Afghan people. It is indifference to the immense sacrifice of the Afghan people and the precious lives lost from the international community that the campaign against terrorism be taken to the sources of terrorism and must be result-oriented. Mr. President, today in Afghanistan, we pursue the cause of peace and an end to violence as a matter of great urgency. Peace being the utmost desire of the Afghan people, and convinced that military effort alone is not an adequate strategy to bring security, we have initiated the Peace and Reconciliation process, which aims to bring all elements of the armed opposition to peaceful lives in our country. Last year, this month, my attendance to the UN General Assembly was cut short by the tragic assassination of Professor Burhanuddin Rabbani, the then chairman of the High Peace Council. His life was taken by a terrorist who posed as a peace emissary, and by doing so dealt our peace process a serious blow. This year, however, unfortunately, the late professor's son, Mr. Salahuddin Rabbani, who has stepped up to take the chair of the High Peace Council, is part of the Afghan delegation and present in this assembly today. I have repeated oftentimes our hand of peace and reconciliation remains extended not only to the Taliban but also to all other armed opposition groups who wish to return to dignified, peaceful and independent lives in their own homeland. What we ask of them in return is simple: an end to violence, cutting ties with terrorist networks, preserving the valuable gains of the past decade, and respecting the Constitution of Afghanistan. To help facilitate the peace process, I ask the United Nations Security Council to extend its full support to our efforts. In particular, I urge the 1988 Taliban's Sanctions Committee to take more active measures towards delisting of Taliban leaders as a step to facilitate direct negotiations. In pursuing the path of peace, we remain hopeful for the critical role that our neighbor and brother, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, has to play. Over the recent years, we have engaged our brothers in Pakistan in a close dialogue in support of the Afghan peace process. It is a dialogue that we believe is critical for Pakistan's own security and the security of the wider region and beyond. We are deeply committed to our brotherly relations with Pakistan, but are aware of the challenges that may strain our efforts at building trust and confidence. Such incidents as the recent shelling of Afghan villages risk undermining the efforts by both governments to work together in the interest of our common security and prosperity. Mr. President, during the past 2 years, our national priority has been to have Afghanistan's own security forces assume full responsibility for the security of our country and our people. The transition process will be completed by mid-2013 and NATO and ISAF forces withdrawn from our country by end of 2014. Apart from advancing transition and pursuing the peace process, the past year has been one of significant progress for consolidating international commitment and partnership. In Chicago last May, we received the long-term commitment by NATO and other countries for the training, equipping, and ensuring the sustainability of Afghanistan's national security forces. In Tokyo this past July, the international community reaffirmed its strong commitment to Afghanistan's social and economic development during the transformation decade, for which we are very, very grateful. The mutual accountability framework adopted in Tokyo sets in place a clear structure for a more result-oriented partnership and cooperation. We welcome the international community's readiness to align aid with our national priorities and channel assistance through the Afghan budget. On our part, we reiterated our determination to improve governance and to collaborate with our international partners to wipe out the cancer of corruption, whether it is in the Afghan government or the international aid system. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, we recognize that Afghanistan's destiny is tied to the region that surrounds it, whether in face of our common threats such as terrorism, extremism, and narcotics, or the opportunities that we must grasp to grow and prosper together. In this context, the Istanbul process presents a new agenda for security, confidence building, and cooperation across the region of which Afghanistan is the center. We will spare no effort to build strong and lasting relations with our neighbors, near and extended. Mr. President, turning to the international arena, Afghanistan views the situation in Syria with much concern. For over a year now, thousands of our Syrian brothers and sisters have lost their lives due to an escalating cycle of violence. We welcome the appointment of the new joint UN Arab League Special Envoy, His Excellency Lakhdar Brahimi. We know him very well. Mr. Brahimi is well respected in Afghanistan, and he brings with him vast experience and a unique ability to the task before him. And here, I ask upon the people of Syria that we Afghans have experienced violence ourselves, and we know what it takes to rebuild the country. So I hope very much on behalf of the Afghan people that the Syrians will sit together as soon as possible and bring no more violence that will be not easy to repair. The continuing plight of the Palestinian people has been a deep source of distress for Afghanistan and the rest of the international community. The people of Palestine have suffered immensely for far too long. We remain in full support of the realization of the rights of our brothers and sisters in Palestine, including their right to an independent Palestinian state. We ask for an end to the occupation and for realizing the just aspirations of the people of Palestine. Ladies and gentlemen, and finally, the UN reform remains an important agenda at the international level. Since its inception in 1945, the United Nations has exercised a key role in promoting a safer and more secure world, improving the lives of citizens worldwide, and safeguarding and promoting human rights. Nevertheless, in view of our ever-changing world, we cannot negate the fact that this organization is in dire need of a comprehensive reform, enabling it to better reflect the new challenges and realities of our time. The reform of the United Nations Security Council is an issue long overdue. Achieving a reformed council that is more inclusive, representative, and transparent must remain a priority, and we welcome the ongoing progress within the framework of the intergovernmental negotiations. Thank you very much for your patience.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan for the statement just made. May I request the representatives to remain seated while we greet the President.